Hello, I'm Stefanie.
And I'm Lauren.
And this is I've Got Guts, a podcast about living and thriving with chronic illness. Let's be real, it is really hard.
But it doesn't have to be. You are not alone.
Right. So we have some good stuff for you today. Today we want to go back to where it all started for us.
Yeah. And where did it start for you? Room.
IBS. How about you?
Celiac disease in the 90s.
we hate the C word. So we're going to talk a lot about both of those things. But before we get started, we want to start every episode with thorns and roses. Because let's be honest, everybody has them in their days. And I think it's important to talk about those things. So let's get the thorns out of the way.
Yeah.
Those are the bad things.
Yeah.
Me first?
You first.
So I'm on a little bit of a fertility journey. Like I said in our last episode, I am 41 years old. I found love late in life, and
She just got married.
And I'm ready. I want to have a baby with my husband. But I don't think this is my month, and I kind of came to that realization today. So it was a little bit hard for me.
It is. But it's not, I feel like my thorn is not that bad.
Well, yeah, what's your thorn today?
Well, we've all been there. I woke up this morning. My husband said he was going to be putting the clothes in the dryer, and he did not. And the shirt that I needed to wear for our field trip to the pick and patch today was wet. And I had 30 minutes to dry it and get myself ready and do it all. But don't worry, it all worked out. But it definitely was a bit of a thorn to start my day. Not as deep as yours, but
that's okay.
It was a thorn for me.
Every thorn is a thorn.
That is so true. Roses.
Every thorn has a rose.
And here we are. And I feel like today, what got me through the day was the rose of doing this podcast.
Yes.
And sitting down and finally recording something that we've been talking about for
years.
So many years.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is my rose too. I mean, just doing this, sitting here. Anytime I get to sit and talk with Room is a rose for me. So this is an extra special rose, though.
It is, with the side of some red wine on this cozy Friday night.
That's right.
I love it. All right. So going back to the beginning, where it all began for you was IBS, right?
Yeah. And if only my mom were here, because she probably could tell the beginnings of my story better than I could. I mean, from the get-go, she said I just came out of the womb not going to the bathroom. So she tried everything from an early age. I probably was force-fed prunes more than any child has ever been force-fed prunes. That didn't work. So it was bad. I mean, from the time I was an infant, and she didn't have any solutions, and I struggled so hard my whole life. I mean, I would go days, weeks without going to the bathroom.
I mean, constipation is painful.
Yeah, people don't talk about it enough.
They don't. And as a kid, life is already hard enough. You're trying to do all the things and explore all the things, and you're not feeling good on top of it. You just want to be a kid.
And you want to talk about trauma, talk about holding in your poop for about a week because you're so afraid of how big it's going to be and it's going to hurt. And then you don't go, and you're holding it in so much you end up throwing up, and then your parents have to force an enema on you, which that was my whole life.
Right.
It was every month I went through that.
Right. And then you go to the doctor and you wonder why the doctors are like, oh, do this, do that, do that. Your poor mom was like, she's watching you go through all of that as a kid. And that's the last thing, as moms we know, you don't want to see your child suffering in pain, and you just want to be able to take it away.
Yeah. So I didn't have any solutions. I really went, I don't even know when my first solution came in the form of Miralax, which I hate. But that was the first thing that came around that was available to help people go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. But it took me a long time to get there.
How old would you say you were by the time you finally, when did they
college? I was in college.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that.
And honestly, my episodes of my stomach attacks were getting so bad that I developed my episodes of syncope. Do you remember that in college?
Okay, so a memory is being jogged.
So my pain was just so bad. I was not going to the bathroom at all, that I had vasovagal syncope. So my blood sugar dropped, my heart rate dropped at the same time. The first time it happened, I fell out of a stand-up tanning bed.
Remember, this is when you had your blackouts.
Yes.
This is when it all started. Okay,
Yes.
that is a really big word you just used for it, and I just remember it
Syncope.
is called blackouts.
Yeah. So the first time I fell out of a tanning bed. The second time I rolled down the cement steps of the Union in college, and an ambulance came and they rolled me, and I had our sorority letters on. So everybody was like, oh,
so much drama.
a girl
that
in your
day.
sorority was just taken in an ambulance out of the Union. And like, they made me lie flat on my back in the hospital. Do you remember? And I was like, I asked you to call my mom. And my mom drove. It's like a little over an hour drive. She probably made it there in half an hour. And she was like, you need to sit her up right now. Laying flat on her back is painful for her. Like, my mom came in, tearing into that emergency room. And once I sat up, I was fine. But they strapped me down on the stretcher.
Tony always gets it done.
Yes. She does. But yeah, so like I was having all these side effects of IBS that I didn't even know were side effects of IBS. Like, who tells you, like, hey, you know what? If you don't go to the bathroom enough, eventually you're going to start passing out. Like, nobody tells you that that's a thing.
And that's scary. It's really scary. And then here you are in college, like, of course we have all of each other, but you're not home.
And it's like a shameful disease to live with. I always felt shame surrounding it my whole life. And like that shame, I think, magnified in college because, like, I don't know, you're a young girl, you're experiencing a lot of things the first time. And also, like, people weren't kind to me about it. I mean, I dated a very not nice person in college. And I remember you were with me. There was a night where we were at a wedding and I was getting really sick and I had to go home. And he straight up to my face told me, your stomach ruins everything.
Right. Like, you have control of it. Like, oh, hey, stomach, hold on, please. I got a wedding. Can you just wait like 5 minutes?
And I feel like
it doesn't happen.
That shame stays with you for so long. And I still carry some shame surrounding my stomach attacks.
I know. I can totally connect. And I know so many people can, because then that starts to happen. Then the fear of like, is it going to hit? Is it going to happen while I'm here?
Yeah.
Is it going to happen there? This is why I drive around with an extra pair of underwear in my glove compartment, because you just never know.
You never know.
Right?
You literally never know. I mean, but I feel like, well, you see, talk about your origin story, but I feel like similar stuff started when you were a kid, but it didn't really rear its ugly head until college.
It did.
All right. So just to clarify for those who might not know, IBS stands for Irritable Bowel Syndrome. And there are a few different types. So there's IBS-D, which is diarrhea. So basically, like, you eat something, you poop it out. There's IBS-C, which is constipation, which is the version that I have had my whole life. And there's IBS-M, which is mixed. So you have both. You have bouts of diarrhea, bouts of constipation.
Or you could have IBS-W, which is IBS wrong, where they told me I had IBS and I really didn't. I was an undiagnosed celiac.
So unfortunately, IBS is like there's so much that's unknown about the digestive tract. And I feel like a lot of doctors, and I'm sorry to all the doctors who aren't like this, but it's a lazy diagnosis on most of their ends. Like, they're just like, we can't figure out what's wrong with you, so we're just going to tell you you have IBS.
So let's give you some fiber. Right?
Yeah,
okay.
Blanket. Yeah, drink some Metamucil and you'll be fine. Right. Like, and that doesn't work for everybody. So that is, in a nutshell, what IBS is.
And it's a real thing. I feel like a lot of times too, like, people will leave the doctor, like I did, and I thought I had it and I really didn't. But when you do, it's a legit thing. And I think sometimes people feel like there's something more going on.
Yeah. Some people think it's an excuse.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, everybody poops. No, I mean, everybody does poop, but this is extreme. I mean,
it doesn't need to be that hard.
And sometimes
Literally.
people don't poop and it's an issue. Like, and that was my problem. But
Right.
I do feel like, and I'm not going to call out like any specific family members in this, but I do feel like some of my family members were like, she's just anxious. It's all in her head. She's just nervous. And like, that was never the case.
Or how about, I think she just wants some attention. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go sit on the toilet for like 4 hours because I want some attention. Not the way I would hope to get it.
I will call out the one family member who was always supportive of me, and that was my cousin Jackie. And
I love Jackie.
she she would get me through, like if I had to go to the bathroom, she would sit in the bathroom with me and tell me a story. And I always would go. So like that is a coping mechanism I still use to this day. Like sometimes I have to make up a pretend story in my head and tell it to myself because like we're old now. Jackie's got kids and a husband.
You mean she doesn't have time coming here
She doesn't have time to come over and tell me a story every time I have to poop. So I had to figure out how to do it myself. But she was the first family member, other than my mom, obviously, who's always supportive, who like was like, let me help you through this. Like, I don't even know that she knew she was helping me through it. I think she was just like, we're cousins and this is what we do for each other. But like, she helped. She gave me a strategy.
Really? And when you think about it, what was the strategy? It was taking your mind off of the problem and having you focus on something else. And when you can, wherever your focus is, energy flows. So energy was flowing towards whatever amazing story Jackie was telling you. And that poop slid right out.
It probably was like a story about how Joey from New Kids on the Block was going to come and like sweep me off my feet. That's probably what it was. And that distracted me enough, you know. Please don't go, girl. Please poop, girl.
I love that. Shout out to the new kids. Can you tell where we're from?
How
old we are, not where we're from.
If you're young enough, you're probably like, who the hell are the New Kids on the Block?
I don't know. I did just go to their concert, and there was a lot of young, adorable girls, daughters of the moms.
I hate to break it to my husband, but if we ever have a daughter, she's going to be a boy band girly.
Of course she
not
is.
A punk rock girly.
Of course she is. I feel like we're looking at him, but he's not responding because he doesn't have a mic like us.
Fill everyone in on your journey.
So for me, it was when I was 5 years old. My mom took me to the emergency room because I was doubled over in pain and she thought I had an appendicitis. And I can still kind of have a vague memory of being in that hospital, like waiting area in the ER. And then I just remember all of a sudden I felt better. And I remember being like, Mommy, I feel better. And my mom's like a nervous wreck, freaking out. And long story short, they didn't know what was wrong with me. We went home and I was in and out of the doctors for 10 years. They could not figure out what was wrong with me. And for a period of time, they told me I had IBS because I felt like when they couldn't figure it out.
They tell everyone that.
They're like, oh, and you have IBS. And it's like, wait, what? And then they also told me I was lactose intolerant. So I went 10 years of not eating any dairy. And like, there was no ice cream as a kid. And I lived down the street from Carvel ice cream and there was no dairy. And then finally there was a test where you could like blow in this bag and see if you were really, lactose intolerant or not. And I wasn't. And it wasn't until, so I went from the time I was 5 until the time I was 22. And I was in and out of the hospital. I was in and out of the doctor. The pain was awful. I was just always sick and you just never knew when it was going to be happening. I'd be at a sleepover and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and have to wake up my mom's friend to like drive me home because I was getting sick. And honestly, I feel like my family thought I was lying because they could not figure out what was wrong with me. And it was the 90s. So celiac disease at that time was not very well known. And I mean, my uncle called me Mona and still to this day calls me Mona because I was always moaning in pain. I mean, now I'm like, really? So you're calling me Mona, but really I was an undiagnosed celiac. So,
oh, I remember when you got that diagnosis.
Yes, sorority days. Mm-hmm. So things got kind of dark.
I mean,
for me.
at the time, the thing to do was to drink beer.
Right. Yeah. So I ended up going to the doctor. And I forget, I think I had an endoscopy. I think maybe it was after I had that. Actually, it was after I had my bleeding ulcer. They did some biopsies and they found out I had celiac disease. And this is like at this point, early 2000s. And it was not very well known. And they told me this. And I'm like, all right, it's all I have to do is be gluten-free. I mean, back then there were like 4 items.
Yeah,
like,
literally.
There was nothing. And we were in Oswego. I drove to Syracuse to go to Wegmans. Bought a bunch of gluten-free stuff that tasted awful. I
actually specifically remember you bought gluten-free waffles and you were so excited about them.
I was.
You got home, you made them. They were disgusting and you immediately were like, that's it. And then you went on like a Bud Light binge. Like you invited everyone over for beer pong and you just were like drinking Bud Light. 'Cause you're like, I'm not doing this. I can't eat waffles like that.
And it was, it was over a really great game of beer pong. And I remember being like, I'm in. And and so I kept going. I kept drinking beer. Maybe I want to say I give the gluten-free diet not even a month. But
Yep.
really, as a celiac, you need to go 3 full months of being gluten-free, seriously gluten-free, to heal your small villi and your villi in your small intestine. And I definitely did not give it a shot. So after college, we graduated and I was so sick, like down to 90 pounds. And I ended up in the hospital and we didn't know what was wrong with me. And then the doctors were like, no, really, you have celiac disease. Like, if you don't follow this gluten-free diet, like, you're going to die. Your body is going to shut down. And that was a reality check.
Yep. It was a hard journey, though. I mean, like, we're still talking times when it was hard to find anything that was gluten-free. So you were living off of, like, bare bones, like vegetables, meat, rice.
And to be honest, I feel like I slipped into, like, a food depression almost. Like, I just remember, like, crying. Like, how am I doing this? How am I going to eat this way? Like, what kind of life is this, you know? And I'll be real, though, the time I got to maybe like 4 months of being gluten-free, I finally felt better. And I remember looking at Sean, my now husband, and being like, is this what everybody really feels like? Everybody feels this way. I have literally been feeling horrific my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how normal people feel. They feel good. But little did I know that because I was an undiagnosed celiac and it's autoimmune, and my body was done attacking itself because I was healing with the gluten-free diet, that there would be a string of other autoimmunes in my future.
Yes.
Sometimes I wish I could go back in time and tell that, Lauren, like, it's going to be okay. And then part of me is like, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I could go back and tell.
What would you tell yourself if you could go back in time? Like, if you could go back to, like, right when we were graduating college, knowing, what would you tell yourself?
Oh God, I don't even know. I think I would tell myself to not be so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Honestly, about poop. Like, that's a future.
So true.
It's a future episode. I think it deserves a whole episode. The whole poop stigma, I can't. It ruined my whole life. It's ruined my life. I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, don't be ashamed. It's not in your head, even though everybody's been telling you that your whole life. And, like, really, this future episode preview, but I would tell myself to not have my gallbladder taken out, because that's really what kind of steamrolled all the other issues for me. But that's for the next time.
It's so true. I couldn't agree more. I feel like I'd tell myself the same thing. I really would.
Yeah.
I really, really would. Because you know what? In the end, I mean, it was all going to be happening, and doing it the way we did it is the way it went. Okay, so for those of you who do not know, celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, and it is something that it's a genetic thing that you are born with, and it may be dormant and it can get activated, which sounds so crazy. Like, it almost sounds like this magical thing where it could just get activated, but it can. Trauma can bring it on, pregnancy can bring it on. Different things can turn that gene on, where you may go your whole life and it may not activate into a certain amount of time. So for me, it activated when I was 5. And it is basically my body was attacking my small intestine. So you got these, like, beautiful little villi, and they were all down and they were sad. And it was because I was eating gluten and it was destroying my small intestines.
Now, clarify for some people what gluten is. Okay, I think there's a
right.
misconception there.
Okay, there is a misconception. So gluten is wheat, oats, barley, and rye. And to be gluten-free, it needs to be free of any of those grains. And it's honestly celiac disease, I think when I think about all of my just diseases, chronic illnesses, everything I've been through, celiac disease is really the most manageable because it's a diet change. Like, you just have to eat gluten-free, and nowadays it's super easy. And things taste really, really good, and it's amazing. But it is autoimmune. Yeah. And once you go gluten-free, you heal your small intestines and you function like a normal human. And the only problem is if you do get poisoned, it could be really, really traumatic.
Well, and I feel like people don't really understand where gluten hides. Like, who would ever think that Twizzlers?
Like, come on, Twizzlers. Get it out with the wheat in the Twizzlers. Like, I used to love Twizzlers.
It's hidden in so many places.
You gotta be so careful.
And like, you have the version where you have to ingest it. Some people, it's topical. Like, they can't even have gluten touch them.
Okay, so do you know what I just recently learned through some research? That technically, if you have celiac disease, I have learned that gluten cannot get get into the bloodstream through your skin. So if anybody's reacting to anything topical, there may be more of an allergy going on, like a wheat allergy, not necessarily celiac. So my son, Connor, we had him genetic tested when he was 6 months old because I wanted to know if he was a celiac or not. And he is. And then we learned later on that he also has a wheat allergy on top of it. So we have to be so careful, not only about eating it, but also what he puts on his skin.
So, I mean, like your Sean, your husband, obviously doesn't have any of these things and he loves gluten.
Duck.
So, like, he has his own toaster, right?
Yeah. He's got his own toaster. He's got his own pots, his strainer, and he keeps it on his side of the kitchen. Contaminator.
But I think that's a piece that some people miss when they're originally trying to go gluten-free. It is really, really hard. And, like, I still get questions, like, from people who've known you for 20 years, and they're like, do eggs have gluten in them? Like, no.
That chicken just popped out that egg and rolled it in some breadcrumbs. And like, no.
It's good. So it is a really hard thing to navigate, like understanding what is truly gluten-free, what's not, how to advocate for yourself at a restaurant or a grocery store or whatever it may be.
And it can be so scary. Like there's so much fear, I think, at least for me in the beginning, when I would ingest gluten on accident and how sick I would get. And then the further along that I went on my celiac journey that I was gluten-free, the longer it went. Every time I accidentally had
your honeymoon?
Oh my gosh, on my honeymoon. The middle of my honeymoon. Oh yeah, man. Yes, it is going to be gluten-free. Nope, it wasn't. I was vomiting
but it
all
wasn't a case,
night.
It wasn't a case of someone giving you straight gluten. It was they didn't wash the pan.
Right. Like exactly. It was the most basic cross-contamination. So, I say that celiac is one of the most easy for me personally because as we will get into it, a lot of my other diseases just came with a lot of other stuff in terms of surgeries and whatnot. But with this, it's more of the fear of every day. Am I going to get poisoned? And the situations that I put myself in. And now, fine, I'm celiac. My son is a celiac.
Yeah.
That is, as a mother, the stress of sending him to school and making sure he keeps his hands out of his mouth.
But
he eats gluten-free, that the teachers are on board, just all the things. So it's just a lot of mental.
He's an exceptional child, though. I mean, like, I can remember him being like 2 and being like, is this gluten-free?
He was so freaking cute.
He advocated for himself at such a young age. But I think from the get-go, knowing that he had it and being able to just not have him ever have gluten, he doesn't really know what he's missing and he could care less.
No, he could care less. He literally leaves football practice when they're all eating their pizza. He's like, peace out. And he comes home and he eats his pizza that I put in the oven right before we got here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It is what it is. But in the end, it is a journey, but it is something that
I mean, here's some advice. Just be like Lauren. If you go out to a restaurant, threaten the waiter or waitress's lies that if they accidentally gluten you, you're going to die. And then they'll feel so bad that they won't accidentally gluten you.
And I feel like whenever you do anything with a smile on your face and high energy, they're like, they laugh like right around along with you. And I'm like, no, really, I hope you don't put me in the hospital tonight. Like I'd like to survive this evening. And they chuckle and laugh. But you know what? They go back and I never get sick.
Exactly. So you have to be your own advocate. And that's something we will talk way more about in this podcast journey. So that's our origin story. That's where it started. It does get a lot worse from here. I mean, I can't believe I'm even saying that because I feel like the things we've talked about are already pretty bad in themselves. But it does get worse. It gets darker. But then you'll hear how we kind of came out of it on the other end. So something to look forward to. All right. And so that's all we've got for today.
Thanks for being here.
And we hope to see you next time.
Bye.